Hi everyone, and welcome back to Fully Playable Games. So on today's video we are going to be going through my top 5 consoles to collect for. Now this is going to be a list that I've put together of the consoles that I'm finding are a bit more accessible to collect for at the moment, or that are worth collecting for now, because I think in the future they're going to be worth a lot more money than they are now. This isn't necessarily going to be a top 5 of my top 5 collecting aims. So like for example, the GameCube won't feature on this list because I don't think that it is feasible within a pricing structure to collect for. Obviously the GameCube is getting quite expensive to collect for, and yeah, so that won't be in this list. This is purely more so, this is probably actually my top 5 list to collect for this year, and yeah, so let's dive straight in with number 5.
Number 5.
So my number 5 pick is going to be the SNES, and before you click off or dislike the video, I will get to why I think this. So the SNES, or Super Nintendo as it's known here in the UK, also over in the US, but over in Japan it is known as the Super Famicom. And the reason why it had the Famicom name is because originally, when the original Famicom released in Japan, it was actually one of the creators' wives who suggested Family Computer. And the reason then it got renamed to Nintendo Entertainment System was because it was released in the West during the 1980s gaming crash. And Nintendo was trying to distance themselves from being a games console. So they named it the Nintendo Entertainment System. So to try and sort of distance it from being a console. The SNES released in 1990. It had a lifespan of 9 years. It was discontinued in 1999. Worldwide console sales was 49.1 million. And total physical games that were released, obviously they're all physical on the SNES, so total games that were released was 1,737 games. That is across all regions, that's not just specific to one region. Currently in my collection across both Super Famicom and SNES, I've got 48 games in the collection. Now the reason I've put this console in this list is, first off, I have been seeing them more and more in the wild, and I'll give you some examples. Over the last year I have seen or heard of 3 different people that have got absolutely amazing SNES bundles. I know one of the guys that I get on really well with, I think it was sort of towards the tail end of the season last year. He got an absolutely massive bundle of SNES games, all complete in box, and I think he paid $5 for the whole bundle. And this weekend just gone, there was someone at the boot fair that actually managed to pick up a console with a couple of games, and I think he paid something like £3 for it. So they are out there, and they're actually starting to see them more and more. I've seen a lot more in the last 12 months than I have in the 4 years that I've been going out to the boot fairs. At the moment as well, I'm also finding that the prices are dropping heavily. So to give you an example, one game that I looked at ages and ages ago was Lawnmower Man on the SNES. And when I first looked at this, this was a 3-figure game, probably about 2 years ago. And yeah, it was just well out of my remit at the time. And then recently I was going through a collector's stash. They had this, and when we looked it up, it had absolutely plummeted down to about £40 complete in box. So yeah, I am finding that a lot of the what used to be heavy hitters on the SNES are really plummeting. Don't get me wrong, there are still some really expensive titles on the system, and I know that from watching one of the other YouTube channels that I watch. But I will say there are a lot more games that are more reasonably priced. And when I look at gaming prices, if it costs less to buy a retro game than it does to buy a brand new game, then it's worthwhile. So yeah, I have noticed that the prices have really started to drop. So with the actual Super Famicom or Super Nintendo, there was 3 different variants. As I say, Japan had their own version of the Super Famicom. It looked exactly the same as the PAL version. It was just named Super Famicom. We've then got the PAL version, which is what I'm used to. And then over in the US, it had a completely different design. And yeah, it was only released like that in the US. There was also a mini version released as well. So it's actually 4 different versions. The mini version was only released, I believe, in Japan and the US. It wasn't released in PAL regions. And I will admit, that is one that I would like to get in the collection. But I do really struggle to find US consoles in the UK. Just for some reason, they just never come up. At launch, the Super Nintendo had 5 games released over in the US. So it was released with Super Mario World, F-Zero, Pilot Wings, Gradius 3 and SimCity. And I think out of those games, I think I am missing one. I think Gradius 3 is the only one that I don't currently have in the collection. So yeah, that is my number 5 pick. And yeah, let's move on to number 4.
Number 4.
So in at number 4, we've got the PlayStation 3. The PS3 was released in 2006. It lasted 11 years until it was discontinued. It was discontinued in 2017. In total, it sold 87.4 million units. And in total, worldwide physical games, there are 2,562 in existence. Once again, that is across all regions, but that is just physical games. There's no digital games included in that number. In my collection, I've currently got 302 PS3 games in the collection. And the reason why I've got it in this list is, once again, a bit like the SNES. I am seeing, especially over the last probably 18 months, I've seen a lot more PS3 games out in the wild. When I first started hitting up the boot fairs, it was probably one of the consoles that I found sporadically, sort of here and there. Whereas now, I am seeing PS3 games every week when I'm out. So yeah, they're definitely getting a lot easier to pick up. And yeah, loving it for that, because I obviously love the PS3. That was my main console during that generation. So yeah, really happy to have that. Obviously, there were a load of exclusive titles on the PS3 as well, such as Little Big Planet, Heavy Rain, Resistance Fall of Man, all of which never released on any other console, which is really good. There are 3 different variants of the PS3. So you've got the Fat, the Slim and the Super Slim. But within those variants, there are different hard drive sizes. Obviously, with the Fat version, you've got there's actually 3 different versions of the Fat. So you've got the 60 gig backwards compatible. The way you can tell it apart is this one's got a chrome finish on the front and 4 USBs. This one had a physical chip inside that allowed it to play PS2 games. Then you had the 80 gig backwards compatible. The main difference for this one was, instead of having physical hardware for playing the PS2 games, it was all done via emulation. And then you got the standard Fat, which was from the 40 gig onwards, which has got basically a sort of matte silver sort of panel on the front, and 2 USBs, and it dropped the card reader as well that was present on the 60 and I think the 80 as well. But yeah, so I will say, with those earlier versions of the PS3, they are very much prone to failure. There was two main issues that you had with those consoles. The first one being that the some of the on motherboard capacitors would fail, leading to what is known as the red light of death. Or is it red light? No. Yellow light of death. Sorry, it's yellow light of death on the PS3, red ring of death on the 360. So yeah, the yellow light of death, that was caused by the two issues. So you had the capacitors, and they were the main capacitors that surrounded the main chip. Then you also had a failure of the GPU. This would be the solder that was used in the actual manufacturing of the chip wasn't up to scratch, and yeah, they crack, they fail. The only way you can really fix it is by reflowing, but a reflow there isn't a guaranteed fix. And if it does fix it, it's not a permanent fix either. Whereas if you've got the capacitor problem, the capacitors can be changed out, and yeah, that will be a permanent fix on the console. The PS3 was also Sony's first console that embraced online gameplay. There was some online elements for the PS2, but you had to have additional hardware, and if I remember right, there was only a few games that actually incorporated the online feature, whereas with PS3 it was front and centre within the console. It was the first console that had its own store, and yeah, really embraced the sort of digital side of gameplay. So that is it for number 4. Let's dive into number 3, because now we're going to get into some of the what I think are going to be the heavy hitters going forward.
Number 3.
So in at number 3 is what I would class as very much a current console, and that is the PS4. Originally released in 2013, the PS4 is still going strong and still being sold to this day, nearly 11 years later. In total, so far, the PS4 has sold 117 million consoles, and there's currently a library of 3,363 physical games. I've currently got 263 of those games in the collection. But it is a console that is ever growing for me. So what I have been finding recently, especially over, I'd probably say the last 10 months, that PS4 games, people are offloading them left, right and centre. It does, before, I'd probably say middle part of last year, if I was to find PS4 games out at, say, the boot fairs, for example, they would be 10, 15, 20 pounds. You very rarely got PS4 games cheap. Now, when I go out, I'm pretty much picking up PS4 games every time I go out to a boot fair, and I'm getting them dirt cheap, couple of quids. I think recently the most I've ever paid for a PS4 game, sorry, this year is probably a £5. They are in abundance at the moment, which is great. If you're collecting, it is absolutely brilliant because, yeah, as I say, over the last year, I have really built up my PS4 collection. I'd probably say before this, I'd be lucky if I had 60 odd games. Before, with like, if you go back sort of 12 months ago, I probably only had about 60 games in the collection, whereas now it has just exploded. Obviously, the PS4 does have another, just like the PS3, an amazing library of games that were only ever released on the PS4. So you've got the continuation of the Uncharted series, Uncharted 4. You've got the Lost Legacy, and also the Nathan Drake collection, which was a remaster of the original games. Horizon started on the PS4 as well, so it's continued on to the PS5, but both of the Horizon games that have been released so far have both hit the PS4. Absolutely amazing games. I love playing through Zero Dawn. I haven't got onto the sequel yet. And then one that actually isn't no longer a PS4 exclusive, but that is The Last of Us. So it's now obviously on the PC as well. But yeah, an absolute standout game. Started off on the PS3, got re-released on the PS4, and has now been re-released on the PS5. But yeah, absolutely amazing game, amazing story, and yeah, really happy with that. So with the PS4, there are 4 different versions. You have got the original fat version, and the way you tell this is that the console is a half and half. So half of it is matte, half of it is gloss, and then the cover that basically sits over the hard drive is gloss. Then you've got the fat version 2, which is all matte finish. So the glossy element of the hard drive cover has been removed, and then there was obviously hardware and performance improvements made with the console as well. You then got the PS4 Slim, which was the traditional slim down version that Sony liked to release. And then with the PS4, the Sony actually introduced the first of the Pro series. So we had the PS4 Pro, which brought us a whole raft of improvements over the original console, such as things like 4K and yeah, just a beefier processor and just beefier internals to handle some of the more demanding games. And yeah, I will say, I absolutely love the PS4. And the big reason that I put it in at number 3 is just because out of the PS4 and the Xbox One, I find it's so much easier to get PS4 games than I do Xbox One. Xbox Ones, you'll see the odd 1 or 2 here and there. Normally you do see them at all the boot fairs, but a lot of the times it's the same titles again and again. Whereas normally with PS4, I'm always able to find at least one new title at the boot fairs. So yeah, that is why I put PS4 on our number 3 slot.
Number 2.
So our runner-up for today is going to be the Xbox 360. Released back in 2005, it lasted for 11 years and was discontinued in 2016. In its total lifetime, it sold 84 million consoles and built up a library of 2,154 games. Currently in the collection, I've got 518 titles within my Xbox 360 collection. And yeah, once again, this is another console that I tend to find games when I'm out and about, whether that's charity shops, boot fairs, wherever I tend to go, you normally see Xbox 360 games. I will say a lot of the time it's normally the FIFA titles, but they are definitely very easy to find out in the wild. But what I will say with that is that the Xbox 360 games are increasing in price quite rapidly. Obviously, the end of this month, on July 29th, the Xbox 360 store is going to be closing. So the only way to play a lot of the games on the Xbox 360 from then on will be physical. So you will find that physical prices will go up by leaps and bounds. We're already seeing it as well, because comparative to the PS3 title, if you grab the same title on both PS3 and the Xbox 360, the Xbox 360 title will always cost more. There's very few instances where that doesn't come into play, but yeah, 9 times out of 10, the Xbox 360 game will always be more expensive, and that is because, once again, because the store closure has been announced. That is leading people to pick up the physical copies whenever they can. Obviously, as well as the PS3, the Xbox 360, later versions come with HDMI. Initially, when the Xbox 360 was released, and stop saying PS3, when the Xbox 360 was released, it didn't come with a HDMI port, and it was just component. But Microsoft quickly rectified that and brought out the Pro version of the original design, which did come with an inbuilt HDMI, and since then all of the Xbox 360s in the series had a HDMI port. The Xbox 360 come out in 3 different versions. So you've got the original fat version, you've got the slim version, and then you've got the E. This was, I don't really know the idea behind the E, but yeah, it was a slightly different shape to the S, or to the slim version, But yeah, it didn't sell very well, and for some reason they decided to put every single variant of the Xbox 360 had a different power supply. They weren't interchangeable or anything like that. So yeah, that was always quite funny. But as well as there being sort of the three main revisions, within each there was obviously different revisions as well. Normally this only included things like included a hard drive or didn't, but with the initial consoles, obviously you had the arcade, which was the first one that was released. That had a AV out and didn't come with a hard drive. Then you had the Pro, which did come with, I believe it come with either a 40 or a 60 gig hard drive, and then they also included a HDMI in that one as well. And then you move on to the Elite, which was the original fat version in black. That come with a 160 or 240 gig hard drive, and that was the only real variant, is the fact it was black and it come with the hard drive. The slim versions, once again, there was no real major differences there. It was just whatever hard drive was included with it. The base console come with 4 gig included, and then there was different versions that were released that included like I think it was 200 gig, 250 gig, 500 gig, and might have even been a 120 variant as well. I'm not too sure. And then obviously across all of the 360 line as well, there was also special edition ones that were released. So this would have been based on games, so like Halo, Gears of War, all got their own official special editions as well. And yeah, they're really nice to collect. I think at the moment I've got 2 of the special editions. I've got the fat Halo 3 version, and I've also got the Gears of War 2 Slim. Unfortunately, one of the biggest problems with the Xbox 360, especially the original versions, was the red ring of death. So this was, once again, very similar to the PS3, and this was all based around the GPU, and this was basically the solder balls cracking and losing their connection, which then resulted in the red ring of death. Once again, it was the only real way you could fix it was to reflow the chip itself, which was never actually a permanent fix. It could always fail at any point. The other big issue that did happen with the original Xboxes was the disc grooves. So this wasn't as prolific as the red ring of death, but this would happen if you had your console set up and the console got nudged or moved or just slightly knocked during gameplay. It would actually carve a groove in the disc that you had in the console, and this groove was so deep there was no way to recover the disc. The disc was basically scrap at that point. But yeah, Microsoft refused to admit that it was an issue, and it was caused by movement of the console. So yeah, that is our number 2 spot, and the main reason that the Xbox 360 gets our number 2 spot is the fact of the prices are starting to climb. So if it's a console that you're not collecting for at the moment, definitely get on board. Try and get as much as you can before they get too expensive to even pick up.
Number 1.
So we have reached number 1, and my number 1 console to collect for is going to be the Wii U. Released back in 2012, it only had a life of 5 years and was discontinued in 2017. In total, the Wii U sold 13.5 million consoles, and has a current physical game library of 206 games. Currently, I've got 46 of those in the collection. But yeah, this is a console that I think is only going to go one way. Because of the low sales, I think within the next few years, it is going to skyrocket in price. I can see this being the next Virtual Boy. So currently the Virtual Boy goes for around £400 to £500. I definitely think the Wii U is going that way. At the moment, it is underappreciated, underloved. but I definitely see that this one is going to be one to collect for the future. As I say, prices are on the rise for the Wii U, but I definitely think sort of 5 to 10 years, this console will be one that is highly sought after by collectors. With such a small library of only 206 titles, it's definitely one that you can go for a full collection of. I will say there are a couple of games in there that are high priced, but I think I'd probably say 90 to 95% of the library is very affordable, very easy to get hold of, and yeah, they're just that last few titles that you'll have to sort of spend out for. With the Wii U, there were two main variants that were released. You've got the basic bundle, which contained the white console and gamepad. It came with internal storage of 8 gig, and then you had the premium package, which was the black console and had 32 gig of internal storage. The basic bundle, the white console, was discontinued in 2015 and replaced with the premium bundle. One of the main reasons that Wii U failed, I'll put that in sort of quotation marks, was the advertising for the Wii U. A lot of people thought that it was a add-on for the original Wii, and I think it was too late in the game when Nintendo started to sort of expand out and explain what it was, and that it was a brand new console. And yeah, by that point, people weren't interested in picking it up. The other consoles had come out. I think this would have been PS4 and Xbox One had probably that sort of gen, wasn't it? And yeah, by that point they'd been announced, so people were waiting on them. And yeah, it just led to the demise of the Wii U. As I say, it is a shame because it is an absolutely brilliant console. I love playing the Wii U. And yeah, even now, even if I'm playing a Wii game, it normally goes into my Wii U. And yeah, I absolutely love having this in the collection. It was one that I've been wanting for a while, and I was able to get it, I think it was towards the beginning part of last year. And yeah, just really glad to have it in. I will say I am stockpiling Wii U's at the moment, so anytime I see them and anytime I can get my hands on them, I will always grab them. They then get put into storage, and then what I'm going to do is that is going to be a bit of a retirement fund, so that when they do go up in value in a few years time, I will then sort of sell off the spares to fund more games for the collection. But yes, Wii U is going to be my #1 pick for consoles to collect for. So that is going to wrap up today's video. Let me know in the comments down below, was there a console that you feel that I missed out on? Is there another console that we should be talking about at the moment? But yeah, let me know down below what you think of the list and if there's any that I missed off. And then yeah, so if you did enjoy the video, don't forget to hit that like button, and if you're not already, smash that subscribe button and ring the bell to be kept up to date when I upload new videos. And yeah, with that said, thank you so much for watching today. Really hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Alright, bye!